So today I have the pleasure to speak to you about Digibrixx, which is an initiative focusing on the real estate tokenization in Luxembourg. For this presentation, we will have an overview addressing 5 key topics. We will start with the tokenization process for what it is. Then we will focus on the topic of tokenizing a security. Then we will bring back the topic aside the real estate market and what it means to cut down the real estate market as an investment opportunity. Then as a use case, we will focus how Digibrixx decided to apply this approach and how they have come up with a new product offering for the Luxembourgish market thanks to its own ecosystem. And finally, we will have a look at the potentials for the near or the future, depending the different aspects here. So tokenization process is definitely a hot topic nowadays. And I found this very interesting number saying that by 2028, the global tokenization market will be above $5 billion US dollars. Currently, Luxembourg fund industry has the same valuation. So definitely there will be a shift for every fund and finance actors, and it will trigger changes. Now, going back to tokenization, definitely this approach and this technology is applicable to most kind of assets. We can speak about tangible, as we decided to do with the Digibrixx, but it can go to intangible, equity, and any other existing financial products, or even beyond with also what we call NTF or different kind of crypto assets. Our focus here today is more about securities. All the other topics are of a great interest, and it's quickly growing among different countries across Europe. But when it comes to Europe, we have to bear in mind that the token is always linked to something one way or another. And this link will define the specificity and the classification of the token. Here, I want to, of course, point out the element about what's the difference between a security token compared to anything else. A security token is by essence a security, so there is a very well-known and established regulation background. When we move to other kind of tokens, we can, of course, speak about the crypto assets kind, and this crypto asset kind is still under regulation process and development at the EU level. And for the next 2 years, the European Union has its agenda to set a common legal framework. The side effect of this called MiCAR framework is that for now on, states are a bit slowing down in taking a position how they want to regulate, classify, and specify what a crypto asset is. So let's dive into the topic of issuing a security token. So we know that a tokenization of a security belongs to the securitization laws. So definitely we can distinguish 2 cycles. We have the security itself, and then we will move on to a security token. To create to issue a security, the process, the life cycle of the issuance starts with informing a third party who will become an investor, then validate that this investor is fulfill all the compliance that we know of as KYC, AML, and then we will move on to the subscription itself. For the sake of this presentation and the way we approach the market with Digibrixx, the relationship between the security token and the investor, so the investment itself, will be done through fiat currencies. So we won't address the question of can I invest in such a security token with other cryptocurrencies. Why is that? It's because it's still unclear for many markets in Europe how we can move from one to the other. Once the subscription process is completed, so once the investor has fulfilled the compliance, once the subscription is signed, then we can move on to the in-between the area of traditional finance to the tokenized asset. So that step is the part where we move from off-chain, so it's not blockchain related yet, till on-chain. So to have a security token beside the initiator, so the entity that mandates the operation, we have the issuer, which is the service provider who handle the investors, the contracts, the compliance, and then we have to create this investor on chain. So for each security token that we have with Digibrixx, there will be also what we call investor ID, investor token, identifying the legally the holder of the token itself. That's where we move in a full on-chain environment. So we know what is the asset and we know who is the holder. Of course, the issuance is run through a platform, as I mentioned here. DLT, so decentralized ledger technology, is should be seen as a game-changing approach, and not just a swap of ledger, because within the traditional finance, they already process this information through their own databases and registries. But coming up with a tokenized solution, it means that they gonna supersede the existing legacy system with a blockchain-based system. Once the project is issued with the rules set in a smart contract, then comes up the questions of storage and custody. There are different scenarios which are now existing in terms of regulation, and soon as a practical solution, it's that people will have the ability to have a native token, meaning that the issuer will be directly using one system as a blockchain, and in certain situations, the same operator will keep what we call a mirror token. What's the difference between a security token and a mirror token that is related to a security? It means that this second aspect of mirroring keep the initial contract at the level of the registrar, and by opposition, if it's a native token, only the token is the proof and the existence of the security. Of course, when we speak about common securities, we are all well versed in the question of transferability. In this respect, in compliance with the legal framework, the transferability between two parties after the issuance of the token still remain under the control of the transfer agent, which means that two identified parties, so-called whitelisted investor token or token ID, will be able to exchange tokens only after the new investor or the new holder will be whitelisted according to the KYC rules, and as well once the funds will be also cleared out by the same agent. When it comes to distribution and repayment, there are different scenarios nowadays, and recently, like two months ago, there has been some breaking news during the blockchain week in Luxembourg, and it was the EIB, the European Investment Bank, issuing for the first time a securitized bond, where people could basically become holder of this bond. That's the first step. But the second step is that the Banque de France also issued euro tokens, which allows the issuer to distribute and repay the bond during its life cycle. In the framework of Digibrixx, which I will emphasize a bit later on, it's a different aspect because we are more in a capitalized approach. For the repayment, here in our concern, we have so far decided to go back to fiat currency. So it allows us to moving faster into the market because as you know, euro tokens are not available yet, or that's already available, but not in every market. Nonetheless, the Luxembourg market is already moving forward with positive signs with tokenized currencies, and that's a positive sign along the EIB announcement. So to come back to these both picture, these two life cycles, we see here that to be able to tokenize a security and operate within the existing market, we have to initiate the process as we know of, and then we can implement a new technological solution that will be game-changing the market, of course. So let's now speak aside of tokenization of real estate assets. And what does it mean to cut down real estate assets? The opportunity of doing such approach can be done without a token. So it can be done by issuing smaller bonds. It can be done like in traditional finance for a very long time, not mentioning the early stage a few decades ago of the lettres immobilières. But the impact is still the same if for us is of a high interest. It means that cutting down real assets project allows to lower the market entry barriers, meaning that the initial investment will be smaller. At the same time, structuring a real estate security allow the operator to control and structure the ownership and the governance, which means that a security holder doesn't have to go through a notary process. It doesn't have to go through general assemblies. It can be run smoothly. And then it means also that it can be addressed to a much larger audience. So we don't have bottlenecks of governance during the investment in this cut down real estate asset. On top of that, what's very interesting is that when you have access to a defined real estate asset project, development project, by opposition to the real estate fund industry, you can bring back people to a more real economy. So they know what they invest in, and they know where it's located, they know how it works. That's something where traditional finance can be fostered on the benefit of real economy and local economy. So it's inducing better transparency and better comprehension for this larger audience. Of course, the tangible assets backed security is reinforcing this transparency, and at the same time, people can understand also the risk and the opportunity of the asset related to the historical market performance. So now when we bring these two topics together, when we try to understand the strength and the potentials of tokenization for real estate development projects, it's even more true than ever. Why? Because real estate development projects are very high tickets to enter. So it cannot be really addressed to a large audience. So it's more focusing on either professional investors or like private funds or high net worth individuals. For Digibrixx, so Digibrixx is a brand established by Property Token. We decided to really open the understanding of tokenization with a very factual product. So to make it more readable and more understandable, we decided to source projects and offer them and cut them down into Digibrixx. So a digital brick at issuance would be valued at 500 euros. And we are asking from any investor to at least buy in for a square meter of the project. What does that mean? It means that people will have something which is tangible because they know of the project, they know of what they own in it, and during the existence of the project, they will be informed of what is happening with the project, or is it going. So they will be supplied with information, but they won't have the obligation either to be involved in the management of the building, nor have to comply with any governance constraints. And that's for us very important, that a larger audience can really materialize in dematerialized investment, really materialize these elements in which they decided to invest, and at the same time they stick to the benefits of it. Of course, we are starting something very innovative here by cutting down the investment, and we set it up in a way where the investment is really like buying a first real estate asset, meaning that the investor will be kickstarting the first layer of investment by 30%, and like a classical acquisition of a real estate, the bank will be supplying the rest of the project and the financing of the project. In other words, it means as well that all the revenues and the performance which will be accounted during the life cycle of the token, here of 12.5 years, will be accumulated and be reducing the investment of the bank to the benefits of the token holder. For more clarity about what's announced and what is to be expected from such an investment and to participate in such investment, we are focusing on establishing a compound interest on a yearly basis, which is indicated by the cash flow performance of the asset. And it will be topped up by the actual performance of the assets and the local markets, meaning that on top of the interest that we have estimated, there will be an added value at the time of the end of the contract, which is after 10 years, the asset will be sold, and then the repayment process can be initiated to the benefit of the investors. What we have to bear in mind here, and throughout my experience with Digibrixx, there is a lot of things which already exist from the traditional finance and commonly accepted rules how to invest into securities. But at the same time, there is a lot of psychology to comfort all the stakeholders of Digibrixx project along this innovation, which means that Digibrixx wouldn't be able to exist if we haven't convinced all the parties to collaborate with us, which means building up strong legal opinions to comfort about the organization of each issuance. On top of that, of course, we are collaborating with operators in Luxembourg who are well versed into fund management and transfer agent duties. And finally, of course, we are also collaborating with banks, which are not only supporting the funding part as a mortgage, but they're also supporting all the legal aspects of custody from the fiat part. And where we are really applying a big change is the fact that thanks to our technological partner, we are able to issue this token in a compliant way with the local rules. And we can also prevent the known issues of being a token holder, which means that in the tokenized economy, and we have seen that in the recent years with the loss of Bitcoin, the loss of access to the e-wallets, and the challenge of appointing the right storage solution, the transfer agent, as a legal operator, has the ability to recover the assets in case of mismanagement, has the ability to interact with the investor. So we are really linking the existing world with the blockchain and vice versa. Don't forget that when something is happening on the blockchain, it's stored forever. So I will cut down short the idea that blockchain economy is something like the dark web, because it's the same principle as exchanging a note between two parties. And each time this note is exchanged, someone is writing down the number on the note. So the system itself provides way more transparency that most of people tend to believe. So now, if we consider the potential future of tokenization, as I mentioned at the on the first slide, the estimates are beyond belief, because there is high potential of combining the existing finance sector with a tokenized approach. So the side effect that we already been observing with Digibrixx is that basically these digitalization of the assets also enable and accelerate the digitalization of the financial services itself. So to make it very consistent, as an example, it will be all the KYC and AML processes, which are along all our operators, more and more digitalized, or at least part of a long-term roadmap to make the process totally seamless for the investor, while guaranteeing the connection with the regulations which are applicable to any security. So we are really benefiting from both sides. Of course, cutting down real estate, cutting down, let's say, VC funds, cutting down all these classes of assets and all these investment opportunities is also an opportunity for a larger audience and for any investor to have a different portfolio, which means that the yield will be addressed to a larger audience and benefit to a larger population. Along with that, when we bear in mind that we are in the securitized environment, it means also that they still benefit from all the existing safeguarding measures from the regulator. Of course, the idea of blockchain is not only the ability to cut down investment. The real interest, which is nowadays still a gray zone and evolving to a brighter future is the aspect of liquidity. The fact that with the first project, let's take a picture of Digibrixx. The first project will enable a certain amount of investor to join in. And then the second one will also enable the onboarding of new investors, and we move on to a larger community. Then we have a first pool of whitelisted people for whom they are well and legally identified. They will be able to start exchanging between themselves the asset they have if they need liquidity, for instance. If we extend that thinking, because it's still hypothetical at the moment, the great benefit will be to basically shift existing saving accounts, shift existing liquidities on the market to higher potential of return through tokenized investment. But at the moment where these liquidities are required back, the investors won't be stuck either in a typical real estate investment, which is brick and mortar, and they have to go along with it. And at the same time, they will be able to benefit from a midterm estimated added value and interest when they will agree on the side on an exchange value. And both parties will be covered and protected by the regulation and the work of the transfer agent. So there is definitely a bright future for liquidity through real estate investment, but also when there will be a more globally or locally at first accepted secondary market. And that's the, for me, the most interesting aspect in the near future of tokenization and security tokenization. Finally, the drive of a project like Digibrixx makes people aware that it's actually feasible because it's now happening. And then people can really jump into that new economy, but without being exposed to high volatility or without being exposed to unknown environment only based on fluctuating supply and demand, depending the parties and depending the environment. So Digibrixx is a very innovative approach for real estate. That's the purpose of the founders of the company, including two large companies who are experts for 20 plus years in Luxembourg in real estate project development. And at the same time, we also gather expertise from blockchain professional and finance and corporate professional to become the first Luxembourg legal one-stop shop of tokenization, because we also have to bear in mind that Digibrixx is only the first use case that will be made available to the markets, and who knows what will be next and which kind of security will be tokenized through that aspect we offer to a larger audience. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer your questions.